We'll just see this. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to our first MCC Team Huddle. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. We're really excited to have you. I wanted to bring this into the mix. You know, we get so many chances to get together with our camps, the one in January and then our great big one in February. We have a lot of fun, and we're having a lot of fun at different races, getting together and, you know, seeing each other at more and more races, and Texas was a big hit. And my whole goal of this huddle for us was to bring us all together sort of mid-season point and check in with one another, see how we're all doing, see if people have questions. You know, at camps we have the Q&A, and we find that we get, you know, a lot of us are able to ask questions in a team environment, a group environment that we don't necessarily always get to ask on a day-to-day basis. I've asked some team captains to be a part of answering some of the questions, because I know you all love hearing my voice only, but, you know, we would like some other input from our team members. So Jennifer here, Jennifer Bowman, she's hosting and taking care of all the tech support. We've got Sue. Of course, we couldn't do any of this stuff without her. She's one of our lead coaches and runs all our events. We've got Jenny Lorenz, who is someone I've coached for about 9 years now, multiple world championship qualifier, Hawaii qualifier, and Erin Green, who is our pro female on the team, who just was 4th place at Ironman Boulder and had a killer performance in 9:49 in absolutely brutal conditions. So I've all asked them to all be team captains and help me do this event. Bring us all together mid-season, share what we're doing, ask questions, share different ideas. So thanks everyone for being here. We've had a really, really successful season so far. We've had Jose and Alex are getting ready to go to the World Championships. Stacy's getting ready to go to the World Championships for 70.3. Got Kristen Hensel heading to Duathlon World Championships really soon. Andy's heading to Denmark to the ITU Long Course World Championships. So we've got a lot of people gearing up for really important races, as well as a whole lot of other races on the calendar where we're all getting ready. Jennifer here is getting ready for Coeur d'Alene. A lot of us are doing Boulder, so 70.3. So a lot of things on the docket. And I want to give us all the opportunity to come together and share our stories and what we've done so far this year, and ask a lot of questions. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Sue to start to gear where we're going with these questions. We had some people prior to the event send in some questions to give you opportunity to give us you know, some things that you might be wondering, but of course we'd like you to type into the sidebar there. We can, any questions that pop up in your head while you're here that you'd like to ask me or any of the team captains. And then, you know, we've got these topics that we have on hand already. We've got 3 really great topics that were sent to us in advance. And then from there, if we have some other questions that we want to tackle as we go through this time together, then we can go ahead and do that. I hope you all have a drink with you. We know that at the camps we like to sit around the bar and have a beer. Maybe it's a bit early in the day for some of us to already be drinking beer. I've got water because it's only 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But maybe for some of you on the East Coast, it's already beer time and wine time. So let's go ahead, Sue.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. And I'm excited that we have Jenny Lorenz with us. And Jenny has been in the sport so long and has been such a great asset to the team. And we've had a couple people ask about lagging motivation. And one thing I found with Jenny, if she's around, my motivation is never lagging. So Jenny, what are your thoughts?
Well, when I was posed with this question, there's probably 3 main keys that I try to focus on if I feel like my motivation's lagging, which by the way does happen to me. And actually I've been kind of going through a stretch recently where I've been struggling a little bit with my motivation. And I think that I try to do is try to figure out why, what the problem is, because I think there's a variety of things that can cause it. And then secondly, you know, respond to that why in some fashion. And then thirdly, try to be reasonable about my own expectations. I'm a pretty goal-oriented person, high performer, and I can tend to maybe sometimes have placed expectations on myself that are a little unreasonable. And so with respect to the determine why, you know, there's a couple of things that I try to figure out. You know, do I have too much on my plate at any given time? you know, between work and family and social obligations and training, that sometimes can get a little overwhelming and can cause my motivation to wane. And so if that's the case, then I got to figure out how I can take something off. You know, is there something I'm doing that that I don't need to be doing? Maybe not saying yes to everything, that type of thing. If it's injury related, that's another reason why my personal motivation can wane. I've had some pretty major injuries over the years. I've had 3 knee surgeries, a hip surgery, shoulder, a whole variety of things over the years, and that can create for me, you know, when I can't do everything I want to do, that can create issues for me, and so I need to try to, you know, if that's the reason why, I try to work myself out of that by focusing on the things I can do. And then sometimes too, am I just stuck in a rut, you know, or do you feel like you're doing the same thing every day, that type of thing over and over again. So maybe, you know, sometimes that can be an issue.
Jenny, I think we lost your sound for a moment there. One of the things that Jenny does really well that I've noticed while we're waiting for her to come back is that she has developed a great group of people to train with. So they do anything from rag ride to fat bike rides in the winter. And really, she creates a community. And I think that is one of the things that when she's injured or other things are going on, keeps her coming back. Marilyn, what would you add?
That I find for people with motivation is a lot of what Jenny was talking about is figuring out why that motivation is lacking. And sometimes that has a lot to do with having an immediate goal. So that might be a training goal specifically for that day or that week or within that training block, or having a race that is sort of, I call it looming over your head, right? I mean, if we've got something that is 2 years down the road and it seems like an easier option to hit the snooze button than get up, I think, well, I got lots of time, so it's okay. Or maybe you don't have anything on the calendar, so there's nothing really keeping you motivated or honest. And so if it's, you know, if it's not injury related, if it's not your lack of love for the sport or something like that is going away, it's just simply, hey, I still really love doing this. I'm not injured. I'm just kind of stuck in that rut that Jenny talks about. I find having maybe something, a goal that you've written down that is short term, we talk about these a lot, short-term goal, long-term goal, but on top of those short and long-term goals, having something that's looming over your head that maybe puts a little fire in your belly, or even maybe even, I like to say for myself personally, scares the crap out of me a bit. Texas did that for me. Honestly, before Texas, I was stuck in a little bit of a rut, and I said, I knew if I signed up for an Olympic distance race or a half Ironman, I might not take that as seriously as far as motivation went, but I knew this was big. And I knew I had all these people counting on me. And if I didn't, you know, show up and be ready to perform with my group, that it was going to, you know, there was going to be a lot of consequences to pay. So I took that really seriously. And that in times when I had to sit on the trainer at 9 o'clock at night in the garage and hammer out a session, my motivation was pretty high with that kind of commitment looming over my head.
Great. And Jenny, we lost you for a moment.
Yeah,
so would you like to finish up?
Yeah, I'll finish up. So like finding out the reason why and finding motivation with something new, that's where what Marilyn was talking about. And then another thing too that I do, you know, that helps me kind of get track is I tap into my community, you know, my coach, who's awesome, my training partners, people that inspire me, and even inspirational reading and just, you know, things that help me kind of get out of that, are things that I do to try to, you know, get my motivation back. As you get older, you know, I've been in the sport a long time, and I'm one of the older athletes around at all the camps. Unfortunately, I'm the old bag of the group. And so, you know, I think that it's a little bit harder as you get older because, you know, stuff hurts, you get slower, you can't keep up with everybody anymore. And sometimes that can frustrate you. And that's where setting reasonable expectations come in. I think, you know, it's not reasonable for me to think that I can hammer with the A boys anymore, you know, because they're all 25, 30 years younger than me now.
Marilyn, when you've done some of your epic camps where you were the only woman and you're out there and you're exhausted and wrecked and you know, you might be last every day. What was that like? How did you continue to motivate yourself?
Wow. I wasn't last every day, so. No, honestly, no, I know what you're saying. I mean, there was many runs in those epic camps, and when you're training with guys every day who are hammering really hard, there's a chance you're going to get left behind, especially on the runs and the swims and stuff like that. And, you know, it was funny, through that time, Scott used to actually send me, you know, pictures of my competitors. He one time sent me a picture of one of the girls that was really, you know, someone I really was striving to want to be or even beat. And he said, post this on your fridge, post it on your computer screen, post it wherever you need to, but you need to know right at the front of your mind, this is what you're up against. And when I knew what those times were, I wrote them down and I knew what I was up against, and I was faced with looking at it every time I thought about maybe eating chocolate cake instead of broccoli, or I felt like I don't want to ride this hard for this long. I knew, hey, those girls are going to be out there working that hard. Then all of a sudden your motivation changes a little bit. So, you know, and that was in a time where I was trying to stay highly motivated to compete to win, which is very different than like what Jenny's talking about. If you're staying highly motivated later on in your career and you're like, okay, I am doing this now for results and personal goals, but maybe not to win the overall women's professional race. So those are different types of, right? I mean, you know, it changes, and I'm also now not doing it for different reasons and different types of motivation. So you find your motivation from different places. But back then, it definitely was about making sure, you know, you knew you had to be outworking your competition, and you're up against people who are ready to rip your legs off, and you didn't want to leave, as the old saying, any stone unturned.
Did you beat her?
Did I beat her? I did. I did, actually.
Jenny, Danny asked us a question. Are there any books that you might recommend?
Sorry, we missed that one, Sue. Go for it.
I'm sorry. Danny asked a quick question. Is there any books that Jenny might recommend?
You know, I really liked The Iron War. I love that book. Yeah, that are triathlon related. I love that book. And I've also read, you know, Chrissy's book. I've read the one that, what's her name? The one that's married to Rebecca Keat. What's her name?
Siri.
Yeah, I've read hers. But sometimes, you know, like I'm reading a book now, I'm just finishing up a book now called Peak Performance. It's not necessarily triathlon related. It's just, you know, a book by a couple of guys that talk about, you know, performance in general in life and business and sport is in your personal life. And I found that to be really motivating. It talks about, you know, your personal mission, vision statement, and what you want to get out of life. And then I think about those things in terms of, you know, not only training, but in terms of, you know, just being involved in the sport and in my business career too. So.
Great. And I think one of the things that I've learned from Marilyn and Jenny is that when we reach out to each other, when our motivation's lagging, we'll start texting or laughing or talking about the same ride that we're all doing. And I think that keeps us going and motivated to get after it. So the next question that we had from some team members, there's a lot of great free triathlon information out there, and there's a lot of not great free triathlon information out there. Do I even need a coach? Erin, I think we'll start with you and how you would respond to that question.
Well, with the age of social media now, there is a ton of.
Sorry, Erin.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. With social media, I think you're right. There's, I mean, just an overload of information where before social media, you had to read a book or, you know, ask a mentor or find a coach. I think it's really helpful to gather information, and especially from people you trust or people who have had success in the sport. So really consider the source. I will maybe talk with other athletes that have either been doing it for a very long time or are at the top of their game, other coaches. But at the end of the day, I hired a coach for a reason, because I trust her. And I think that she and I know what's going to be the best path for me. So if you don't have that person in your life, I would encourage you to go find them. Sometimes people don't need a coach, and it's a spouse or maybe their training partner that provides that kind of filter to help them decipher all that information. But I've worked with a coach before Marilyn. I worked with the same coach for 5 years, and before him, I worked with the same coach for 2 years. And ever since I got a coach, it just helped me kind of navigate that world of free info. And consider what you're paying for that info and how valuable it is. So if it's free, maybe weigh that in your mind as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Jenny, what would be your answer to those questions?
Well, I think my first answer would be that it depends on your situation. It's how inclined are you to go out and seek out the information? Some people really get into that stuff. I've got friends that I train with.
I'm just going to stop right there. We're having trouble seeing Jenny on the live stream, so maybe Marilyn can take that question.
Great. Thank you. Marilyn?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sorry, guys. All this techno stuff is a little bit new to us, so bear with us as we learn how to do this for the first time. Yeah, there is a lot of great, like Aaron said, there's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of great programs out there. One of the issues is when you have just a stock standard program that you buy off the shelf. So you get these, they're template type programs. You have to remember they're written for the norm, and they're written for, you have to really know where you are as an athlete and what that training response is from that program that you're trying to get. And so, there's a lot more behind coaching and training than just doing a bunch of workouts. There is a certain amount of load at a certain amount of time and a training response. And then how much it's not always 2 + 2 is 4, unfortunately, with training. Sometimes, you need to back off a little. Sometimes you need to push a little harder. And that doesn't always necessarily mean because of recovery, but it might be because the athlete's coming into form too quickly. And a coach can see that. The more experienced they are, the quicker, the more they're going to be able to see that. So if an athlete's coming into form too quickly, or an injury might be looming, or maybe they aren't responding to that type of training in that moment, you need to change things, or there's other dynamics going on. And if you just have a template program, all of those moving parts, nobody's monitoring that for you seeing it. On top of that, I even personally hire a coach for myself, even after doing this for so many years and being a professional coach, because I strongly believe you can't see yourself. You cannot see yourself. You can't see what your strengths and weaknesses are. You can't see, where you're headed, what you actually, it's just like, when you all of a sudden hear yourself talk on the phone or a recording of yourself and you go, wow, I didn't know I sounded like that. It's like that, right? I mean, we all think in our mind or think we look a certain way, or we're responding to a certain type of training, or that it's something's working for us. And that's not always the case. And from an outside perspective, that's why even in business, we ask our friends, we ask our colleagues, we ask for annual reviews, these kinds of things, because we may see ourselves as a certain way or see our performance as a certain way, but to get that outside perspective and planning and on yourself is really, really important. How much training load, when to take it away, when to push it, how much you can handle, all those things that are constantly moving targets and moving parts.
Do you ever find, Marilyn, that you'll tell an athlete, stop reading things?
Sure. Here's the thing with that. I'm not a super dictator type coach where I'll say, do this, don't do that, my way or the highway. And there's a lot of coaches out there like that. And I can understand why, because there's a lot of stuff out there that can really confuse people. But at the end of all of that, I go back to one of my mission statements as a coach, which is to educate people and share with them as much knowledge and information as I've acquired through my own experience and through what I know, share that with them. And hopefully, like I say, if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I will have left something behind that taught someone something. So if someone goes out and reads something and they try something, I want to know that I'm educated on it enough that I can give them a really good response on what I think of that. And then we're working with adults here. None of us are kids. So then they can make an educated decision which direction they want that to go. As so much so, even, you posted and you talked about the shark fin paddles. I went out and bought a pair. I was like, well, people are trying these things. I know Eni Jones. I know her personally. I better go try these. I put them on. I took them to swim practice today. I had 3 of the top swimmers who were D1 college swimmers try them. Say, what is your opinion on these? I want to know if my athletes are trying these and people are talking about them. I want to see and feel for myself what they're about. So I don't steer people away from it as much as I say, what is it that they're reading? And then I educate myself on it, or maybe I already know, and then I let them know what my thoughts are and my experience, and then I let them take that and figure out what's best for them.
Do I look already larger up top from the shark bite paddles? That's what I want to know.
Right.
They're a lot of fun. Thank you. That's great. We have the next question from an athlete. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about Ironman marathon execution. This athlete had a couple questions. The first was, his impression was, you should go out and do an Ironman marathon, start slow, and then build in a mile 8. Or to do short walk.
Hey, Sue, we lost your audio.
We lost your audio, Sue. Can they hear me? That's okay. I think. Oh, are you there?
Maybe.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So Ironman marathon execution, and we're going to talk a little bit with Erin, who went Boulder.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that last part. So Ironman marathon execution. Well, I still feel like a little bit of a rookie with Ironman marathons because I just did my 6th pro Ironman this last weekend. And I come from a 70.3 background, and I do not come from a marathon background. So I've run one open marathon in my life, and it was when I was in college. And it was like a 5-hour marathon. So I feel like I'm still learning this, which is kind of cool. And it's humbling because it helps me understand where other athletes are coming from as they kind of embark on this. I think one of the critical things I've learned is, first of all, fueling hydration. There is absolutely no room to miss it or skip something or say, hey, I feel great, I'm just going to blow through this aid station. There's absolutely no room for that in an Ironman marathon. So that would probably be my first tip, is to figure out your plan, do this in training, use your coach, of course, but reading and asking other athletes. I think that fueling and hydration can be a good thing to ask other athletes what has worked for them, because it's a very individualized thing, but then practice it. And along those lines, one of the things that I think I've messed up in the past is feeling pretty darn good in, the early miles of the marathon and treating it like a 70.3 and just letting myself unleash on the course. And it has cost me dearly on previous marathons where the finishing time was still okay, but man, did I suffer. So with this last one in Boulder, one of the things Marilyn told me actually to consider doing, because they were calling for a high of 95, I'm at elevation, higher fluid needs, and I have a history of kind of starting that run dehydrated. She was like, why don't you put just like a disposable, like a water bottle from a gas station in your T2 bag and, 24 ounces or whatever, and start with that, with whatever drink mix you want in it, and you'll be ahead of the game. It'll slow you down, so you're not going to blast out, too early in the marathon. And I was telling my husband this story, and he's done a couple Ironmans and has made that mistake of going out too fast. I love your coach. She's got the right idea. This is such a great idea. And I really did feel the effect. It gave me something to focus on, to finish this bottle in a certain amount of time. I couldn't go too fast because I'm carrying a bottle and my stomach is full of fluids. So that was a really smart move, I think. And then in training, I don't think there's any way to fake your way through an Ironman marathon. So you should know through your training kind of what you can expect of your body. And with the right training and the right guidance, even though I hear athletes say, well, I've never run that far off the bike before. Well, you've run off the bike, first of all, and you've run on really tired legs in training. So put those two together, and a well-trained body will be able to execute. You can kind of predict what to expect and stick with your plan, because people are going to be going bonkers, and straying from their plans, and your power is in your plan and trusting that plan in yourself.
Erin, do you have a mile marker where you're like, I'm going to try to lift the effort at this point and go?
Well, at Ironman Boulder, it happened around mile 16, mainly because I had people in front of me that I knew I was gaining on, and so that kind of motivated me. And I kind of just knew based on how I was feeling that it was like now or never. One of my things that I had discussed with Marilyn before the race was, don't wait for things to happen, make them happen. And I trusted in my fitness and my training. In previous Ironmans, I've gone into the run undertrained, and it wasn't any fault of my coach or anything. I just had like some setbacks and injuries, and I just did not have that trust in my body to be able to execute that run. This one, I kind of knew the timing was right and I was going to go for it. And if I didn't take that opportunity right then, I might miss that opportunity. So it kind of presented itself to me. A lot of people say that Ironman starts around mile 20 of the marathon. So, mile 20 might even be a benchmark for some people, get through that final 10K, and just empty the tank. And again, if you're well trained and if you kind of know what to expect out of yourself, on race day, it will come through.
Are you a Coke drinker? And if so, what mile do you generally start pounding the Coke?
I do take cola on the course. It kind of depends. I go a little bit off of feel, and at Boulder, I think I started it right after I finished that bottle. So it was around like mile 5. I started with the Coke. Whenever, again, back to the fueling and hydration thing, you have a plan, you've practiced it in training, but it also has to be flexible, and you have to know your body well enough to kind of know what you need. And so as I was approaching an aid station, I would kind of take stock. I didn't take Coke at every aid station. Once I start it, I usually will hit it every other aid station. I'll take a couple gulps, just because I don't want too heavy of a sugar load without that fluid to actually use the sugar in my gut. But, you have to be able to make those judgment calls on race day too. If it does get super hot, or if you accidentally dropped a bottle on the bike, so your hydration's behind, you have to be able to adapt that and change it.
Great. And Marilyn?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's marathon execution is going to be a little bit different. When you're someone like Erin, and our chats before the race are going to be driven towards her, trying to perform to compete against the top women in that race. And so some of the things I'm going to tell her are going to be tactically based on knowing her goals are to be in the mix at the front of the race with the top women. Someone else, it might be that we have a completely different plan where we might even plan walk breaks in, but the idea is and to add to what Erin is saying, is that you have a plan going in, and it's very important early on in the marathon to stick to that. It's very, you know, and to know between whether it's for yourself or with you and your coach to know what your tendencies are. Some people's tendencies are to go out too hard, and you and your coach have to have some kind of plan to make sure that that doesn't happen. Okay. Now, someone else, I'll use me as an example. I actually tend to start out too slow because I start the run pretty sore and shuffly, and I am a little bit like, oh God, I gotta run now. So I actually need, like, okay, that first mile, I've got to, you know, focus on cadence, get myself going, get myself boogieing, and take a mile split and know, okay, I need to actually get on pace and get to work and get my rhythm going and get myself actually into the race. So everybody's a little different. And the important part is that you know which one you are or what your tendencies are. If you know, like I know for Jenny, we plan in walk breaks. So we might say, okay, we're gonna run the first 2 miles in this, and then we're gonna walk briskly through the aid station. And those are planned in from the start. We get to lower the heart rate a little bit. We get to let the body loosen up a little bit. If there's any tightness lingering anywhere, we can let that settle down, get some calories down, and then right back to pace. So really the key is for marathon execution is to have a plan going in, know what it is you're going to do, make it really, really important, especially in that first half, you stick to it. And then we always know from, you know, once you've been out there for 10 miles plus, it's going to get hard. So, you know, not only do you have a plan early on for management, but later on for continuing to push yourself and push your limits and really stay on task later on when it gets very hard and very challenging.
And I'm going to add a little bit to that, but in the meantime, if anyone has any questions, we do have some spots for any team questions, and you can just enter them on the chat. One of the things that I have used throughout my career is the walk breaks very successfully. I've qualified for Boston multiple times in Ironman doing that. But I think it's important to not look at it as a vacation, but look at it as an opportunity to get some fuel, some hydration, because all the races I do seem to be in the surface of the sun, ice everywhere. And it really is an opportunity to take 20 seconds at the end of the aid station. Don't get clogged up at the front and do what you need to do. And then in my mind, I think before I die in the heat, I need to get to the next aid station. And so I just keep doing that. And I know I had one marathon when Louisville used to be super hot where I had 26 walk breaks, and it was very effective and saved the day, I felt. And I always try to have that benchmark of mile 18 where I want to lift the effort and do that. So while we're waiting on any questions, I'll move on to the next question that we have, which is long course mindset versus short course mindset on the bike. And Marilyn, would you like to start that one out for us?
Yeah, obviously, you know, the short course racing, there's a lot of different dynamics now in terms of whether you're going to be in draft legal type short course racing, the super sprint, the sprint, the ITU type stuff for amateurs, as well as, you know, that's available for amateurs now as well. And then there's the Olympic distance where it's not draft legal, and then the 70.3. It used to be that 70.3 and Ironman many years ago were closely related to one another, and it was considered the long course racing. That has shifted quite a bit in the more recent years, that actually the short course racing and 70.3 in terms of training and execution of race are much closer to one another. And Ironman is an animal all by itself, and that is your, you know, your uber long event and requires a different engine and different, you know, type of training. So whether it be 70.3 and under, obviously your tactics are going to be much more aggressive. You're going to be, you know, getting through the event. Your fitness should be at a level that you feel like you're really racing from the start. You're racing. Of course, it's going to be different from a sprint and a draft legal than it is a 70.3. But, you know, with the way the races are playing out these days and the amount of entries on these types of courses and the packs and that kind of stuff, even so, you see a little bit more of, we're going to have to, you know, be in a group in the swim, get out of the water on the bike, and be, you know, legally working within these packs and racing pretty aggressively from the start. We're starting to see some really, you know, some some close relationships between 5 and 10K times and half marathons in that 70.3 distance. So they're really closely related in the type of training that you're doing. A lot of those, I've done a lot of training with people who have actually been to the Olympics, medaled at the Olympics, been, world championships and been top 3 at world championships in ITU racing. And they're doing pretty long training in terms of, 4-hour rides, 90-minute runs, that type of thing. So for them to extend that to a 70.3, but go very fast is not that far away from one another. Now in an Ironman, obviously this is a whole different animal. You're talking about, you'll see many ITU racers or short course racers. Some are coming over and doing long course racing successfully now because they're have that kind of endurance and strength to execute that length of event. The same way we used to say 1,500 meter runners and 5K runners on the track go to 10K on the road and then move up to the marathon. Some of them could successfully do it, but not that many. Most of them, it was more the half marathon runners up to the marathon. So we're seeing some ITU racers go into Ironman racing and be very successful, and they're really, really fast. They're the ones that are really lighting it up now and changing the sport a little bit. But for the most part, those short course racers don't have the strength or durability within them to handle that kind of training and race that long. That's typically, if you look at like really, really fast guys and women over the years of the long course racing, they're typically a little bigger, stronger athletes who are able to handle the durability of the length of the event. So in terms of mindset, one is a very long, durable strength endurance event, and the other one is much more of, so if we think of like a very strong, steady, some of you even are not even familiar, the sport's grown enough and gone along enough with Chrissy Wellington, but she was someone, hopefully you know who she is by now. She changed the sport for women's racing, and it was simply that she just set it at a pace and never slowed down. It's the type, she was just so strong, she could go so fast for 8 to 9 hours. And it wasn't that she was fast in terms of like, I'm gonna like light it up and changes a pace and fast 5 and 10K. She really actually wasn't that quick on that stuff. It's just her all day pace was so much stronger and better than everyone else. She had no breakdown. Whereas someone who is a total thoroughbred or a Ferrari short course fast racer, they're going to, be much more suited to 70.3 and under. So that's been my experience with those two.
Well, and we just got a question from Emily. And Emily is, and this is near and dear to my heart because it is, I think 105 here with the heat index. So she's spending a good deal of time summer in Central Florida, which is oppressively hot and humid. Can we talk about how best to train on the surface of the sun and best ways to recover beyond moving? Marilyn?
Well, Sue, I think that seems how you're our surface of the sun queen. Now, I know that Jen and I are sitting here in 111, 115 every day in Phoenix, but you are definitely our surface of the sun queen. So I'd like you to take the reins on that question for Emily.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I think that it is challenging, and I hear a lot of athletes know that they may have a hot race coming up, and it's hot out right now, so they will go out 8 weeks before their race and train in the middle of the day to get used to the heat. And one of the mistakes that people make by doing that is you just can't train as hard, and you end up sacrificing your training intensity for heat acclimation. One of the ways that I deal with it here in the Midwest is I actually do a lot of training indoors when it gets really oppressively hot. I know it's not fun, but I find that I can really work on my training fitness and really build my fitness over trying to sacrifice for the heat. I also work a lot on when I schedule my workouts. So I have a group that I train with periodically, and the line I tease everyone with is winners get up early. So we might start a bike ride at 6 a.m. and we can be done by 9 a.m. I can get a transition run before the heat really hits. Swimming, I find we have a great 50-meter outdoor pool here. Even when it's hot, you can swim. And if you have a nice pool with water cannons, things like that, it can be really helpful. So a lot of times I'll rotate my clock and I'll make the second or third workout. If it's a swim, I'll do that outdoors, and it's usually fine to do that. Best ways to recover: air conditioning. I sleep cold. My spouse is not really happy that the bedroom's 60 to 65 degrees at night, but they can put clothes on. I find that it really helps me recover. And then one of the other things I do, I have a hot tub. And some of the recent studies show that using a hot tub to acclimate can be very helpful. So if winters get up early, I get up early, I get those hard workouts done. I finish those workouts, and then I will go sit in a 104-degree hot tub for starting at 10 minutes, and I'll build over that. Don't do that alone, though. There's been some times where I've had to lay down after sitting in the hot tub, so you want to be careful about that. I know Jenny has to deal with heat a lot in Iowa and humidity. What are some of your tactics that you use, Jenny?
You know, I'm kind of I like the heat, so I like it when it gets hot, and it doesn't really spin me up too much. One of the things that I do is, in addition to the things that you've mentioned, I sauna too to get ready for hot races. I like sitting in the sauna. There's a lot of benefit to health in general sitting in the sauna. So I'll try to do that. I'm fortunate that my gym where I lift has a sauna in the women's locker room. So I'll use that. And then, yeah, I just try to go by the, train hot, live cold type of mentality, where I try to make sure that I'm cool at night. Our house is always cold as well. And lots and lots of fluids too. That's obviously critically important. I can go out for an hour run and lose 7 to 8 pounds of fluid because I'm a really heavy sweater. And I know that because I've done that. I've tested that a number of times. And so I have to be really careful about, making sure I'm rehydrating appropriately. And I think that's important for the next day, so that you can turn around and back it up.
Don't you use a lot of extra salt, Jenny, too, in your drinks?
Because my sweat rate is so high, I use a product that Marilyn recommended called The Right Stuff. And that it's like super highly concentrated of sodium. I personally think it tastes like crap, but I'm fortunate that doesn't really bother me too much, and it doesn't bother my stomach or anything like that. And during an Ironman race, I'll go through 5 or 6 of those during a race just to make sure my electrolyte balance is still good, and I drink it with water or Gatorade or Scratch or something, and I've had good success with that. I find that it keeps me able to handle whatever I put in my gut for nutrition, whether it's goo or shot blocks or whatever. I don't ever have any GI distress, and I think partially because I use that electrolyte, and it keeps electrolytes in balance and keeps the fluid in me so that I can handle the calories, and so that's worked really well for me in the past.
Erin, what about you? What are your thoughts on hot environments?
Well, I had to break out my down booty slippers last night because it didn't break 60 degrees here in Boise. So, but we do get heat in the, probably next month. It's going to be in triple digits consistently, and it doesn't cool off at night. Everything you both said is exactly the kind of thing I do, whether it's training inside. I do the hot tub after workouts too. Try and keep the bedroom cool because the sleep is so critical for recovery. If it gets too hot to really execute a workout, I'll kind of, I'll look at, the combined stress of being out in the heat and the type of workout that's prescribed. So if I have like a really tough run on my schedule, I'll either hit the treadmill in air conditioning, or I'll do it early in the morning when it's cooler. If I just have like a steady state run that's an hour or so, I'll go out in the heat because I know that it'll be slower, but I can practice hydration. I can, kind of practice those things. But I won't necessarily combine the two. Like I won't do a super hard bike or run workout out in the blistering heat. I don't think that's and Marilyn would probably agree, that double stress on your body is not really going to get you anywhere. other than that, I really think nutrition is paramount. And, some people are super paranoid about, drinking lots of, sports drink, or some people will just go for straight water. I usually will tell people, put a little extra salt on your food and just drink fluid in a nice, cool environment, and you'll regulate that pretty well.
Great. And Marilyn, you won Ironman Malaysia. How hot was that?
Yeah, I mean, my nickname used to be the Desert Lizard. So that was, I was actually at one point, they were making a jersey for me, the Desert Lizard, because I trained, I've trained in Thailand, I've trained in Philippines, I've trained in Palm Desert, Arizona, Australia, one Ironman Malaysia. So I tend to like the heat. I'm the one that's curled up in a ball in the cold, crying and sucking my thumb because I can't handle it. So I will say, all the things you guys are, I'm so proud listening to you all, because you all have absolutely perfect answers. And it is really about management and being smart. When the conditions get hard, whether it's, wind or it's heat, or, you're training in it day to day, it's really, common sense really becomes a huge part of how you're going, and reading your body and understanding you as far as how much you can handle. Someone who loves the heat is going to be able to handle a little bit more. Someone who finds it very, very stressful and maybe, loses a lot of fluids, tends to cramp, that kind of thing, they're going to have to do more things to manage themselves in the heat. So it really is knowing your body, knowing what's best for you, and then exactly right, being really smart and sensible as far as, making sure you don't overheat too many times a day. You look at your recovery, being able to hit those key sessions really well, set yourself up well, and as far as setting up your training for execution, that those are done the right time of day in the right conditions, so you can continue to improve your fitness and continue to recover while you still acclimatize to heat for those hot races, and understand the difference between executing in heat and executing in cold and different things like that. So yeah.
And how hot is it in Arizona now?
Man, it's not as bad as last summer. Last summer, it was like 120 in Phoenix every day for 3 months.
We sat outside last night. It was so nice out.
Yeah, but it's been, so when Jennifer says that it was nice out, it's still, 105, 110. Like last week we were training at 111. So nice out is, and she's, saying to me, oh, I did my run and my paces were a little bit off, but it was 115 and I was on the track. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to be a little slower. So,
right.
It's relative to where you live. Whereas, see, if you're in Michigan, Emily comes from Michigan, she's headed to Florida, and Michigan's quite cold most of the time. And then suddenly in the heat and humidity, we're going to have to, maybe just take extra precautions, make sure we're hydrating, all that things. Erin's also, registered dietitian. So when she talks about these things with nutrition, really listen in closely, because she really knows what she's talking about on that stuff. We're lucky to have her talk about the nutrition side of things for us.
And last year we had Andre from New Orleans come to Fast Camp. And remember how he came to Fast Camp and he was lamenting how slow he had gotten in the pool?
Yeah, so that is the one part that people, they forget about. They realize when they're out on the bike and when they're on the run, it's very hot and it's affecting them. Some people can pick up on that in the pool, and some people don't. And I can tell you that hot water, and even being in outdoor pools where in the middle of the day, you're right to run early, ride early, and swim maybe later. But you might look at when it's really hot out, finding an indoor pool where you're not directly out in the sun every day and it's really hot. And if the water temperature is hot, you might be, changing your pace time expectations by 10 to 15 seconds or your send off, so to make sure that you're staying cooler. Take water bottles with you to the pool that have lots of ice in them or frozen, so you can spray it under your cap and stay cool. Make sure you're wearing the thinner swim caps and not a thick latex cap, things like that, to make sure you're not pushing yourself. It's the same as when you're out in the elements. If the water's really hot, you're going to have to slow down and adjust your pace expectations.
And I remember Andre was so frustrated coming into camp, and then he was all whirled because the water was 20 degrees cooler for him. So it made a big difference.
Heat is real. Heat is real, but how you handle it is up to you, right? So just like any other condition, wind is real. It's a real thing, but how you handle it is up to you. And then that's going to determine what your results are going to be out in conditions.
Great. And that is bringing us to a close. So Marilyn's going to talk a little bit, and thank you everybody for participating. Marilyn?
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you so much for everybody for coming to this, everyone who took the time to help me prepare for this and put this together, Jennifer, Sue, Jenny, Aaron, for being a part of all of this. I really feel like the more times we can connect as a team and we can help deliver, information out there, answer questions, even just come together and chat and share different ideas. We all come from different perspectives with different experience and have something to offer as far as teaching one another. I feel like if, we've got someone who's got 20 years experience or 2 years experience, we've all got experience that we can really share with one another and bring out the best in one another. And the more often we can do that and really support each other at different races and different camps, we've got Fast Camp coming up. The more times I get to see you through the year, the more times we get to train together, the better we all are together, as not only in our athletic journey, but in our personal journey, right? We develop these friendships, these bonds, we get better at our jobs, we get better, in our personal lives, all of these things, we just become better people all around. And I feel like the more times we get to do that a year, we're all happier, I'm happier, and I feel like, the more times we get to do that, the better. So thanks for everyone for being a part of it. Like Aaron said, we talked about before race, all this stuff comes down to you. You have to make it happen. So I'm really lucky to be surrounded by such a strong group of people that we all make this happen and we all come together. So I appreciate you all for sure.
Thank you so much. And I think that's a wrap. So we do have a questionnaire after this that if you have a moment, Jen is going to post the link for you guys just to tell us a little bit about what you thought of our first huddle. So we're going to review it. And if you have any questions in the meantime for the next huddle, please let us know. So thank you all very much and have a great evening.
Bye.